Listen, I tell you, I'm so excited about having you here tonight,
Thank you.
especially on a topic about school to prison pipeline. It's not the traditional conversation. We're talking about the problem, the solution, and the change. But one of the things I want to reiterate, I want to bring out before the audience get a whiff of who you are, and I just want to give you your due honor. I want to say that as I get to sit here and be a host, right, that you've been an intricate part in my life. You've served as a mentor for many years. The conversations that and the words that you had spoken into my life was part of a community that made sure that whatever tried to knock me off, you made sure that I stayed focused on the path. And I just wanted to make sure I gave you your flowers while you can still smell them.
Thank you, Rashidi. Much appreciated.
No problem. So, Craig B. Allen, can you tell our audience, give them a little bit of credibility, who you are, where you're from, and what qualifies you to even speak on this topic?
Thank you. Thank you, Rashidi. Well, I am a native New Yorker, Brooklyn born and raised, right here.
Absolutely.
Bed-Stuy. Though Bed-Stuy is not quite do and die now like it used to be back in the day.
Okay.
Right? Gentrification is a very real thing.
Yes, it is.
But in fact, what Rashidi didn't tell you is that for years, my mother's house is right across the street from his father's house. We literally were on the same block together.
Absolutely.
Literally.
Y'all saw everything.
We saw everything. But that's another story. But for 34 years, I worked for the New York State Office of Children's Services. 7 years I spent working in a juvenile detention facility right here in Brooklyn, providing direct services to young men who were ages 12 to 18 years old. Then I spent 18 years working in the Office of Program Development and Evaluation, where we looked at various programs to help successfully rehabilitate the young men from and prepare them to return to the community successfully. One of the issues that we found in OCFS and pretty much nationally is that there's roughly a 75% recidivism rate.
Wow.
Which means that 3 out of every 4 young men who have been locked up, young men and young women, when they are locked up, they will go home and they will re-encounter the correctional or the prison system at some point in their lifetime.
Wow.
So we looked at different programs to try to make that change. Then due to some budget cuts the last 8 years or budget changes, I went from the juvenile justice side to the child welfare side, where we were providing regulatory oversight for foster care, adoption, runaway homeless, and domestic violence programs here in New York City and throughout the state. So it gave me a fairly comprehensive view, both within New York City and within New York State, from the juvenile justice and the child welfare side, for some things that are impacting young people today.
Wow. That was mouthful. You actually have put in a lot of work. And so what I want to get to, because like I said, a lot of people do talk about the problem, but I believe that there was some insight that you saw. There was some opportunities that you was given to apply some things and come up with some solutions. So talk to us a little bit about, if you can, some of the things you saw and what you saw from your standpoint that needed to be corrected. Because I heard you say budget cut, budget changes. What was the effect of that?
Real things. Well, let's start with this. When I first started working in the juvenile facility, it was in the late 80s, early 90s. I started in 1987. As I tell people, back in the Jerry curl, 4-finger ring, rope chain days, boombox. That was a real thing. For those of you that don't know, Google it.
Radio Raheem?
Radio Raheem. There you go.
Okay.
All right, that was a real thing back then. At one point, believe it or not, I even had a flat top back then.
Okay.
One of the most heartbreaking days and reality checks I ever had was shortly after I started working. We were supposed to run groups.
Okay.
Nobody ever trained me how to run a group. They just said, run a group with these young men for an hour every day. So I asked what I thought would be a fairly simple icebreaker. I said, where do you see yourself 5 to 10 years from now? I'm talking to a group of 14 to 16-year-old young men. So these are late, like what would be 8th to 10th graders, right? Or it should be 8th, 10th graders. Had about 10 of them in the room. These young men looked at me and said, I'll be dead. I'll be locked up. Or it was even worse, I can't even see 10 years from now. And I remembered when I was in 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, those three things never entered my vocabulary. That I would be dead, or I'd be locked up, or my future was vast. My future was endless. It was full of possibilities. But these young men believed that they would either be incarcerated or dead between 16 and 21 years old. And the tragic thing was, for many of these young men, not for many, but for several of them, it became a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Wow.
There were young men that we released, and within a month of being released, because at that time, the Rockefeller laws were a real thing, so young adolescents could be charged at 16 as an adult.
Right.
So at 16, they'd be released at 15, turn 16, commit the same crime, but instead of going to juvenile justice, now they're going to adult corrections.
Wow. Wow. So you was around when the Central Park 5?
Yes. Wow. Yes. And remember, those young men, they said, we didn't do it. But the police badgered them into a confession. And there were young men that I worked with that I took to court. I remember taking young men to family court, and their judge, their lawyer didn't even know who the young men were. I'd be sitting in the waiting room, and the waiting room in Brooklyn Family Court at that time, we might have 300-400 people sitting in the room, and the lawyer's walking through saying, Joe Jones, where's Joe Jones? And Joe Jones is sitting Joe Jones is right here. Like, yo, he's right here.
Right.
There's a 5-minute consultation. And I heard lawyers tell the young men, even if you didn't do it, just plead guilty. Because if we fight it, you might get 3 to 5. If you plead guilty, you'll get 12 months. Wow. There's no advocate. There was no advocate. It was bad. And here's the thing, Rashid. The Bible says this: without a vision, the people perish. So these were young men that had no vision for their future. Their only vision was to become a drug dealer,
right?
A stick-up kid. That was a time when music videos were becoming a big thing.
Absolutely.
So they would inundate themselves with these images. And one of the things that we did not realize, they're realizing it now, is if all I do is consume these images, now this becomes the dominant voice for me. So it's not my mother's voice I'm hearing, it's not my pastor's voice, it's not my teacher's voice. It's the voice or the videos, it's the voice of the music that's in my ears 5 hours, 7 hours, 10 hours a day, telling me, be the beast, shoot him up, take what's yours, all that stuff. And that's what they did.
So the unrealistic or the fantasy,
yes,
becomes reality for them.
It's what they thought. And the tragic thing was, for a lot of these young men, that was all they thought they could do. When I sat with them sometimes, one of the other guests talked about, you talk to them one-on-one, and sometimes talking to them one-on-one, you get some insight, as opposed to talking to them in a group, because in the group, they got to maintain their mantra.
Correct.
They got to maintain that posture.
Correct. And that's something that with don't lose your train of thought, but that's something that with males, matter of fact, males in general, they say that me being in education for years, they say that you praise in public, rebuke in private.
That's right.
Because whenever you chastise a male in front of his peers,
right,
he's gonna buck back.
Yes. Right. And so, but when I had conversations with young men privately, a lot of them would privately say, I don't want my little brother follow in my footsteps. I don't want my little, some of them had kids. I don't want my son to be like me. So you're 16 years old. You have no degree. You have no job skills, but you have a child or children, and you're locked up. So you can't even be a voice for your children. So now the cycle is perpetuating itself. So one of the things that for me, this is real important. You know, one of the questions that I heard we talked about before was, why are you so important? Mm-hmm. Right? Why are you so important? Mm-hmm. A great youth leader, phenomenal youth leader, made this statement. He said, "Give me a child by the time he is 5, and I will raise him into a man of my own age." Wow. Right? That sounds almost scriptural, right? But it's not. It's not. This is a phenomenal youth leader. He actually started a movement in his country. Mm-hmm. It wasn't local, it was national. But in his country, started a movement that raised up thousands of young people and gave them pride and dignity, and they became disciplined. And he became a dominant voice for them, right, to the point that he really began to influence them because see, if I can get a generation of young people, right, then you give me a generation of young people now, and I will tell you where your country is going to be, your culture, in 25 years. And the person who made that statement, right, who do you think it was?
Hitler.
There you go. Adolf Hitler.
Wow.
Because people forget, Hitler started out as a youth leader. Right. And it was the youth that, when they became adults, moved him into power.
That's right. So he went after the youth. He knew that that's what keep it going.
And so we have now young people who, absent a different vision, are searching for a vision and will cling to somebody that will give them a vision of what life could be, whether it is a pro-social vision, mm-hmm, or not.
Absolutely.
And so the young people now, even when they have dreams, they have no framework for how to achieve the dream. And for young Black men especially, listen, I was at a cookout recently, mm-hmm, and and we were having a conversation about images that Black people are seeing of other Black people in the media today and what's happening. Right. And one of the men that was there, he's maybe a little bit younger than I am, but not by much. But he remembered watching The Cosby Show.
Okay.
You know, with he was docked with him and Felicia Rashad, they're playing the Huxtables. And he made a statement that I found really interesting. He said he hated the show.
Really?
Because he thought it was an unrealistic depiction of Black people. Because in his experience, he did not ever see 2 Black professionals being married.
So he was okay. Even Good Times wasn't.
He was okay with Good Times.
He was okay with Good Times.
Because Good Times showed an undereducated Black man who was proud, doing what he could, working manual labor to try to keep his family together, and a wife that wasn't working. Sanford and Son, okay. What's happening? Okay. But the idea of 2 professionals being successfully married, raising children, he said he never saw it. The best he ever thought of seeing was a Black person as a police officer. He never imagined a Black person as a lawyer.
So with all your years of experience, how do you think we should go about getting them to see what they don't see?
One of the things that we have to do with a lot of young men that I dealt with back when I was working with them directly in the facility, some of them were very successful. They were dealing crack.
Okay.
They were what we call street pharmacists back in the day.
Yes.
Right? And some of the young men that I spoke to, they literally were telling me that they were making, this is back in the late 80s, early 90s. Wow. $2,500 to $3,000 per week.
Okay.
one young man that I worked with, he sat and said, yo, Al, how much would it cost me to put my son through college? He had a son who's about 2 years old. And I said, like a private school, the whole nine? He said, yeah. I said, at least $80,000. This 17-year-old who was a drug dealer leaned into me and said, yo, Al, I've already saved up enough money to put my son through college. And at that time, my gross salary was $16,611 per year. So this 17-year-old young man was telling this 20-something grown man that he had saved up 5 times my annual salary. And the issue is, if you have a business that's bringing in $3,000 a week, even if it's not a legitimate business, right? You're not going to leave that business to go work for $5 an hour.
Right. That's realistic. So what's the solution?
So was there a way? And the thing was, at that point, that was all we offered them. We didn't think about what are the skill sets that make you successful. What are the legitimate business skill sets? Market research,
okay,
supply and demand, managing cash flow, public relations, getting the word out about your product, understanding the competition. We don't want to eliminate the competition, because eliminating the competition in the street is a much
has a different context.
Different context.
Right.
So we don't want to eliminate the competition.
Put us back in court.
There you go.
There you go.
But the question becomes, what are the legitimate parts of that we can take and put it in a legitimate business?
Correct.
So that you can earn that kind of money legitimately without having to deal with the police, the threat of the police, or somebody's really trying to take you out. Your competitor's taking you out.
Absolutely.
One of the things that happened, but the other part of that, Rashidi, was this. A lot of the young men that we dealt with back then, and a lot of young people, I think even today, let me put it this way. When I was growing up, we were taught very early, start at the bottom and work your way up.
Right.
You don't start out working at the top.
That's right.
You start out, you walk through the door,
okay,
you humble, and a bunch of us are going to tell you what to do, and you're going to work your way up.
That's right.
So I found out about a program at one point. I don't know if this still exists, but at this time it did. And I would go to young people and I said, listen, I heard about this program, I can sign you up for it. You are now 16 years old, 17 years old. You get out of here, you'll be 18 years old. You start this program at 18. By the time you're 30 years old, this program will train you, they will teach you, they will educate you, provide for you. It is a successful business. It's global. Everybody knows the brand.
Right.
And you can make, by the time, they will set you up with your own business. So by the time you're 30 years old, you can make $20,000 a year. Young people said, really? I said, straight up, it's legit, guaranteed to work.
Right, right.
They said, what's the business? I said, you got it. I said, the business is McDonald's.
That's right.
McDonald's had that program. If you work for them for 10 years, they would help you buy your own franchise.
Correct.
But you got to start out. You didn't even start out saying, do you want fries with that?
Right.
You started out cleaning bathrooms and washing tables and throwing out trash.
The grunt work.
Grunt work. Because they wanted you, before you own your franchise, to know every part of owning that business and running that business.
Absolutely.
And when I mentioned McDonald's to the young people, they always said, I ain't working on McDonald's. Wait a minute. It's the same company. It's the same opportunity.
Same opportunity.
And they set themselves up like working at McDonald's was beneath them.
Correct.
So there are some things that happen with some of our young people. So to me, one of the things that we see with some of the talking about this school to prison pipeline, there's some young people right now that because of situations have a lot of unrealistic expectations.
Okay.
And consequently, The other part of that is that there are not that some of the programs that do exist are not meeting the young people where they are. They're saying, we want you to, we're starting out with, we may be giving information that's at the 9th grade reading level, right? This young person reads at the 3rd grade reading level.
Correct.
We got to get to a 9th grade reading level. They do need to get to a 9th grade reading level, but until they get to a 9th grade reading level, can we bring the material down and communicate with them where they are until we can bring them up to this point? You're right. They should be because they're 17 years old. They should be at a 12th grade reading level, but they're not. But rather than beat them up for not being there, let's try to meet them and then raise them.
And then raise them up.
We can't blame. One of the things that happens sometimes in corrections is corrections in services. Sometimes it's we blame the victims for stuff. And don't get me wrong. Some of the young people have done certain things, and the actions they have committed. There are consequences for those actions. They need to understand that.
Right. So you're talking about accountability.
Yes.
Take responsibility.
Yes.
Reject passivity.
Yes.
And we have to teach them to learn how to lead courageously.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. But you can't lead unless you're willing to take responsibility.
Right.
You can't lead others. A lot of young people, for example, they would say things like, "I want my own place." I want my own apartment. I want to live independently. I said, well, that's cool. But let me ask you a question. Do you get yourself up in the morning? They said, what do you mean? I said, do you wake up or does the staff wake you up? Do you wake up on the first knock or does the staff have to come by 4 or 5 times to get you up out of your bed? Well, how about showers? How about, do you run to the shower or do we have to drag you to the shower? Compel you to take a shower. How about self-care? Those things because when you live by yourself, there's nobody to do that.
That's right.
Right? So you got to be able to do those certain things for yourself. So if you can't do that, then you really are not ready to live independently. And one of the things that we would tell young people a lot of times when they want to be supervisors, it's like, you can't be a supervisor because you can't get to work on time. How you gonna supervise somebody else?
And you can't get to work on time.
You wanna be a boss, but your work is not correct yet.
Right.
You haven't mastered this yet. Right. So before you tell somebody else what to do, and that's what it is. They want the position, and it's not just them. There's a lot of people. They want the authority of being able to tell the people what to do. But before you can tell anybody else what to do, you need to master and model certain things first.
Right. Absolutely.
So that other people will follow because they choose to, not because they have to.
They have to. Listen, your years of experience and the information that you shared and the dialogue that we had is so profound. I mean, it's so profound that we need a second part, a third part, a fourth part. And we're definitely going to get the opportunity to do this again. But I just want you to just finish out and just give you the opportunity to say, in your opinion, now that you're in retiree stage, you're in a position of doing consulting work, what do you believe needs to be done at this point? What are you looking to do to help this system, to help these communities get to the next level?
I think one of to me, at the heart of it, people prosper when they do what they love. But a lot of young people, when I talk to them now, what they say is, you say, what do you want to, what kind of career path? And the average young person, I go to them, whether it's in foster care or juvenile justice, they say, I want to go in music, meaning I want to be a rapper.
Okay.
Or I want to play basketball, I want to go into the NBA. Okay. You're 5'4", you weigh about 250 pounds, and you have a vertical leap of about 4 inches. I don't think the NBA is I'm just saying,
At least not in that capacity.
But so what you love though is sports. Is there some other sports related thing that we might be able to tie you to, so you can still have a connection with the league? You say you want to be a rapper. A lot of folks want to be rappers. The reality is it's a highly competitive field. So if you're not a rapper, what can we get you doing in the music business that may still let you be an attachment? So there are things that people love to do. And if we can figure out and help them begin to see, one, that there are possibilities for them further than they ever imagined. Right. That there's a future that they can have, a legitimate future, not a fantasy future where they're living in the $20 million home. Because the reality is very few of us live in $20 million.
Correct.
And you don't get to live in a $20 million home if you haven't figured out how to generate business that can support a $20 million home.
Absolutely.
All right. So, but the big thing for me is this: is if we can help young people understand what their gifts are, what their talents are, and line that with what their passions are, and then figure out how to monetize them, we now have we can now form a roadmap for them to help them find a path to success, where we are now coaches and guides as opposed to being guards.
Absolutely. Wow.
See, we guard the path, but we don't guard them. We guard the path so that when things are coming along the path that would distract them, we can point them to how to get around that, how to overcome that.
Absolutely.
But ultimately, it's not my path. It's their path.
Sure.
It's their life.
So I like to always say that we need to learn how to act like a tailor. Guide the thread, but don't manipulate the design.
And understand that what looks good on it, because brother, you look good. I got to tell you, you look good, man.
Thank you.
I don't like to rock that though. You understand what I'm saying?
Okay.
But you got to do what works for you.
I got to do what works for me.
And I got to do what works for me. Right? And if you do what works for you and you're successful, that doesn't mean that I got to copy your style.
That's right.
But I can figure out what works, but I can understand how you got there, but then I got to figure out how to do that for me so it fits me. So I'm comfortable in it. And in my own comfort now, I can achieve the thing that's before me.
That's right.
And then we can go meet and enjoy it. And now it's not a competition thing. It's a complementary thing.
That's right. So instead of competing, we're completing.
We're completing.
Man, listen, this is so exciting. It's so exciting to have you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you so much.
To have you on this platform and to have this dialogue with you as a mentor of the past and a greater mentor in the present. I honor you and I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Rashidi, thank you for having me here. It's been my honor to be here. And watching the growing up Rashidi. Bless you, man.
Well, listen, here I am again. We're talking about a very serious topic, school to prison pipeline, the problem, the solution, and the change. And we got a chance to talk about the problem. We got a chance to definitely dive into the solution. But somebody would say, why would you put solution before you put in front of change? Because we can have all the solutions we want, but we definitely need to connect it to change. Because if we don't make that shift, then everything will stay the same. And we'll have a bunch of plans sitting on the table and nobody's following. So, Dr. Marshall, I'm so excited about having you here tonight because the work that you're doing in the community, what you have done over the years has allowed people who rose from the ashes and collect their beauty. And they're living in it and they're walking in it. Can you just tell our audience a little bit about what gives you the credibility and the expertise to be able to talk on this topic?
I have a number of things, right? First, I'll start with the things that I think matter, but may not matter as much. For one, I have over 20 years of experience in everything from career development to human resources recruitment, and I've made a career of helping people connect to either their dream career or into the business that they've always dreamed of starting. I'm educated in that regard. I have a bachelor's degree in social work, a master's in psychology, and a doctorate in education. But what I stand on is that I am a person who has been sort of like to hell and back, right? So I've lost everything more than once, and I've recovered all and more than once. And so I think for myself, being someone who's lived through it, who's brought myself from zero way above six figures multiple times, I've lived through that and I'm able to teach it. I think lastly is I've studied this pain, I've studied this work. And I think sometimes people often will ask, well, why should I connect with you? Why should I work with you? And it's really because not only have I lived it, but I've studied it, and I'm an expert in this pain and in this work before you ever knew that you were already in it.
That is absolutely correct, because me and you did a show actually not too long ago, and you was on my show, The Language of Scars. And we're not going to talk about that tonight because you got an opportunity. So anyone who's listening to us, they need to tune into that particular show to really get your story behind the scenes. But we want to make a shift today because we are talking about school to prison pipeline. And one of the things we want to tackle is, because your area is career development, because you have served in the areas of HRA, human resources, and human development and community development. Let's talk about the shift. How are we going to shift the mindsets? Because we talked about youth, we talked about young adults, but oftentimes we got to remember that they're still attached to parents. They're still attached to those who are older than them, their environment, their community. And oftentimes, especially in the Black community, we talked about the lack of resources. So how do we get people to shift that mindset? What's your take on that? Take us to that journey, and how are you doing that, and how are you helping people achieve that goal?
So mindset, I think, is the very first place to start, because if you can't see it, you can't achieve it, or you can't grasp it. I think one of your previous guests talked about that, not being able to see beyond their current circumstance. And I think being able to take people from a place where you give them the words and re-educate them and dispel some of the lies that they currently believe. We often have these limiting beliefs, right? If I were talking from a spiritual perspective, I would say that they are strongholds and heavy weights that we've grown to believe about ourselves over time. I could take someone and work with them regarding getting a new job or taking a huge salary leap, but I could never get them to that place or get them to stay in that place if I don't shift their mindset, right? So I have to work from the foundation. And so it's sort of like a tree, right? The trees have these roots, and for me, I have to take the time to dig those roots. So I investigate either through my intake process, my discovery calls, to find out what those roots are. Because oftentimes for some people, it may take a shorter amount of time to get to a goal, and for others, a longer period of time, depending on what those roots are, right? Also, you have to be committed to your success and your goal and your growth.
Okay.
Right. So this is a partnership, right? And I'm coaching. I'm not playing the game.
Okay.
Right. And so for me, it's helping my clients and helping those that I serve see the possibility and to also help them see the truth about themselves. Oftentimes, people don't know what they're capable of or what's on the other side of what they currently don't know.
Absolutely.
So I'm always breaking that down to help them.
We often talk about fear and what fear does to an individual. It's not even so much the fear of failure, but now we're dealing with the fear of success. The fact that I will achieve it and I have to maintain it. So how do you work with an individual like that? Because now you have a parent who recognizes that they didn't have the right standards or certain things wasn't put into place in their household. And now you may have that single mom who wants to now break out. She wants to make up for all those years that she didn't have it before, or the dad. How do you deal with that situation in your program and in your assessment?
So one of the things that I like to have people do is to interview their fear.
Okay.
Right? And so you have to ask yourself these questions. Why am I afraid? What am I afraid of? And then you interview that all the way until you get to the root, right? Oftentimes people focus on fear, and it's not about the fear. Every one of us is gonna face fear. It's about how you respond to fear. Okay, so some people face fear and their response is courage, right? Because they do it whether or not they feel the presence of fear or not. And there are other people who face the same fear and their response is to withdraw, is to cower, is to not act, right? And so people have to be taught how to respond to fear and to understand that that fear is only there to stop them, right? It's not there because it can actually prevent them from doing whatever it is that they want to do.
Absolutely.
So people have to be taught how to respond. And so that's certainly something that I do. I help people walk through that. And oftentimes people will get down to, when they interview their fear, they often result or they get all the way down to some sort of trauma, something that they did not deal with. Or something that they did not understand was connected to why they're not becoming who God has created them to become, why they're not starting a business, why they're not going back to school, why they feel like I can't alone is the presence of something outside of yourself. If I was in church, I would say it was something dark and evil, right? But no matter what, it's negative, right? And it doesn't generate from you. You are a child of God. You are a creation of God. And because of that, you have the ability to do and to create. And so if you find that you have an I can't achieve that, I can't do that, even though it's in your heart to do it, even though you have a passion for it, then there's the presence of something there that needs to be plucked out.
Right.
And so when you walk through with me, I mean, I'm a purpose pusher. So I'm not here to be nice to you, but if this is your goal, we're going to get there.
You gave me a different intake on pushing, right? Because the last guest is talking about pushing. You said purpose pusher.
Yeah,
right?
I'm a purpose pusher.
You know, as you was talking, it made me think about my grandmother was very intricate in saying stuff like, stay out the kitchen, you know, if you can't stay in the heat, right? But it made me think about no one in their right mind will put their hand on a burner on top of the stove, right? You just won't do it. And if you ever made a mistake and did it before, you burned yourself. So now it prevents you. That fear says if you do it again, you're going to burn yourself. But what I have learned over time as I was listening to you is that you actually can put your hand on the stove. The question is where you put your hand. So if you put your hand on a knob, you can control the temperature. You understand? So with that said in mind, how do you help people control the temperature? Because they're so used to putting their hand on the burner and getting burned, they no longer even want to go in the kitchen. So how do you even get them in that process? How do you even get them to bypass all of that and put their hand on the knob?
Well, there's a scripture that I love that says, "My people perish because of a lack of knowledge." And oftentimes people lack information, right? For one, just to bring you back, if you are immature, you will touch the fire, right? Because often you tell children don't, and they do, until they learn the lesson that it's hot. Then they won't do it again. That's called immaturity. And that you often see even in adults, because they are still doing things and still getting the same results because they refuse to grow. And so oftentimes, sometimes you even see that with the parents. And so parents have to make a decision that I choose to grow. I choose to invest in myself. I choose to be a part of the exchange. And I think that's a part of the problem that I've realized a lot, is that people think that, not that you can get something for nothing, but they don't realize that there is an exchange that comes with pain, that comes with sacrifice, right? It's like the athlete that now has to work out a certain amount of hours, that has to sacrifice time, that sacrifice their diet, and they take on a different discipline. Well, that's an exchange, right? It's not a suffering, it's an exchange for the greater thing that they desire. And I think people have to be taught what you get in that exchange. Everything is on the other side of your comfort. Okay, so you have to let go of every dream you have is on the other side. Okay, so you have to travel past your comfort zone and get comfortable being uncomfortable. And sometimes that's why we need coaches. People often like to be a lone ranger, and you can't. It takes a community to raise a child, but that's because we're bringing that child to maturity. It also takes a village to support anybody that's doing anything, right? Your pastor can be a coach. Your boss can be a coach. You should be reaching out to people who are experts in the space that you want to go in.
So don't be afraid of people who are stronger than you or wiser than you in other areas.
Yeah, I think if you're afraid of them, then that's an indication of your immaturity. That's an indication that you need to rethink what you're doing and where you're going.
Wow, absolutely. Yeah. So we know that you are really heavy on the area of career. And me working in that area also, like you, one of the biggest things that I harped on when I dealt with my college students was I got them to stop looking at the job. I didn't allow them to come in my office and talk about a job, right? And they coined job as just over broke. But I would always have them focus on career or business mindset. And why? Because that's something that they have to build and work on. Job, usually that mindset, they get something just to appease a couple of dollars and then it's over with. But are they looking to build? So if you wanted to look at something like they wanted to be a doctor, right? There's a certain amount of hours and things that they have to do to build that type of career and call. So in that aspect, that career aspect, and we're talking about not just young people, but the parents, the community, and we're talking about the Black community who we talked about lack of resources. Just dive in as we even come to a close, what is your take on what needs to be done now to make that shift? Because I know I said it earlier, but we're seeing the, Instagram, we're seeing the media, taking over, and the traditional ways of helping people get over that is not there anymore. So what are you doing now in post-COVID?
I don't think it's post-COVID.
Okay. Well, help me
I
out.
think we're still.
We still
I think
pre?
we're still in the middle of it. There's a couple of things. For one, I think that the way that we talk about purpose, traditionally, we talked about getting an education to get a good job, and we often led with the purpose. And young people today are not as interested in purpose because they aren't always aware. Some are, but they aren't always aware of the fulfillment that comes with fulfilling your purpose. Okay. And so for the ones that only think about money, it's not bad that they only think about money. It's the way that we package the message, right? Sometimes we have to lead with the value and then talk to them about the purpose, right? So if I were gonna market something to you to talk about maybe you becoming an entrepreneur, I probably would talk to you about the potential of what you can earn in this avenue, right? Because I see you're going viral all the time. You're only 16, you got 2 million followers. You know, I'm talking to you about something that you are already passionate about. And then I start to educate you about what the value is. And then once I have your attention, then I talk to you about the purpose. Okay, so what are you gonna do with that? What's your message? What are you passionate about? What do you love? What do you like to do? You know, I see you're always, you know, mentoring other people. Why don't you think about how you can bridge the two and use your audience to create a business? And I think that's one of the things that I never heard of when I was in high school, junior high school. Entrepreneurship was never introduced. Absolutely. Even though I always was an entrepreneur. It was always work for someone, right? Yeah, it was always get educated. And today, Black women are the most educated people on the planet. We have the most degrees than any other race of people. And because it was what was ingrained in us, right? But I always was an entrepreneur. I was always serving. And today, I wish that someone would have introduced me to entrepreneurship early. I think even today in schools and colleges, career development is not taught widely to be inclusive of you being an entrepreneur. And I think that young people have to look outside of that. One of my mentors, he has a t-shirt business, and it says, he has a line slash through where it says rapper, athlete, and then it says entrepreneur, because he's trying to show young Black men that there is another option. And I think that that's something that we have to make apparent to people. So within my business, I have a business called Work Matters. And within my business, I talk all things careers, side hustles, and entrepreneurship. So in any one of those veins that people are interested in, that's where I'm building them up. I'm building their capacity and connecting them to their dream job or to the bag. I'm just gonna say it in a way that people can. I'm gonna say it in a way that they can receive it.
You done said hustle, and we in the Central Man. You in the barbershop. You in the barbershop. You talking about purpose pushing and all kinds of stuff. But I love the way you coined it. I love the fact that you was able to share it. Of course, you can't share it all. Right. You gave them a snippet, but at least we didn't just focus on the whole prison pipeline and we stayed stuck there. We said, listen, we talked a little bit about the problem. We gave the solution, but we also focused on the change. And we focused on the fact that there are change leaders in your community who made the change first, such as yourself. And because you made the decision to change, now you can go and reach back and find others.
Absolutely.
As you coin up, and as we come to a close, because I'm actually looking forward to doing this with you again, can you just tell the audience, or just tell them, you know, from your, what would you tell the younger version of yourself now?
So I would tell the younger version of myself to one, embrace your intelligence and your beauty. That it's a gift that God gave you, and to be brilliant and to be beautiful is not something to be afraid of or ashamed of. And I would tell myself to really figure out why you are so afraid in certain areas. I just feel like if I would have known that the areas that the devil fought me on were the areas of my prosperity and my gift and my talent, man, I would have dealt with that a long time ago.
Long time ago. But the most important thing is that you found the keys now.
Yes.
And because you found the keys, whether the light is on or not, you still know how to access the doorway.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate
You're welcome.
you. You was just amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jacqueline Brantley, and I would just like to share a final thought that we all need to work together as a community because we all have pieces that we can add to this puzzle that will, teamwork makes the dream work.
Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Chakira Marshall. I'm your career architect. I help women and men achieve the career of their dreams, one goal at a time. And if you want to get in touch with me, you can follow me on Instagram. My Instagram is Work Matters, as well as Her New Leaf. And that's it.
Hi everyone, my name is Evangelist Civil Grace. I'm a mother of 4, like I told you earlier, and a grandmother of 3. I believe all mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, everybody that live in the community need to stop, take a look, and help our children because they need help before they are extinct. As well, I'm also getting ready to start my own program called RNS, Rising and Surviving. I am geared to help 17 to 21-year-olds get their GED versus the Board of Education. You can reach me on Facebook, Sybil Bracy Spade, or Instagram. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Craig Allen. I am recently retired from OCFS, and I want to give a special shout out, which I did not do earlier, to Dr. Anita Underwood and the Master of Science of Organizational Leadership program at Nyack College. Final thought. In my career of 34 years in juvenile justice and child welfare, I discovered that there are 3 kinds of youth workers, irrespective of title, function, or whatever. 3 kinds of youth workers are dream killers, dream keepers, and dream givers. Which are you? You can follow me on Instagram at Big Boston A, on Facebook at Craig Allen. And there are some other things coming down the pipe, but for right now, that's the best way to reach me. And I hope to hear from you soon.
I am your host, Rashidi Denson, co-founder of PMD Advanced Consulting, also known as R. Denson Eagle Language. I wanted to remind you that Verizon sponsored this segment tonight. We are so excited that you joined us tonight because we're passionate about our communities growing. We're looking forward to you taking your rightful place in this fight to have us rise up and get beauty for our ashes. You want to get in touch with me? Look at Global Inc. On Instagram, also Global Feed the Fire Global Ministries. You can also find me. I look forward to touching base with you sometime in the future. That's a wrap. That's a wrap, y'all. We did
All
it.
right.
Thank you.